Hello, welcome everybody. I'll give it a minute for folks to join. Got some people in the waiting room here, so I'll let everybody in and we'll get going pretty soon. Cool, cool. I see that number ticking up. Wonderful. So my name is Ian Sharples. I'm a sustainability program manager here at the California Housing Partnership. I will be hosting the session today for our electrification training series. This is session 201, planning, operations, and maintenance. If you missed session 101, don't worry. It should still be helpful for you. But we also have the recordings available if you are wanting to go back and check that one out. We have a really good program for you today. But first, I'd like to acknowledge our sponsors. This year, we have a new sponsor. It's the Equitable Building Decarbonization Program. This is a state of California program from the California Energy Commission that incentivizes um, rehabs in existing affordable housing properties. So definitely be on the lookout for that. Launching this fall is the new EBD program. We also want to thank our ongoing sponsors for the electrification training series that have supported us for several years now. First is LIWIP, the Low Income Weatherization Program for multifamily buildings. What this does is it offers weatherization and energy efficiency upgrades for multifamily affordable housing properties. We also want to thank the BUILD program, the Building Initiative for Low Emissions Development Program. This is an incentive program for all electric new construction of affordable housing. We also want to thank SOMA, the Solar and Multifamily Affordable Housing Program, that offers incentives for solar generation and storage on existing buildings and coming soon new construction. And finally, we'd like to thank the LADWP program, CAMAR. That's the Comprehensive Affordable Multifamily Retrofits program that offers electrification rehab incentives for Los Angeles Department of Water and Power customers. So thank you again to all our sponsors, LIWIP, Build, SOMA, CAMAR, and EBD. A little bit of session logistics. We will be recording this session, so I think the recording is live now. We will be sending out the recording later to participants, and I do believe we'll be putting it up on our YouTube channel for future reference. We will also be having a two question and answer sessions. So this is a 2 hour program. We'll be having a uh, question and answer session on towards the end of the first hour, and then the second Q&A session towards the end of the second hour. So be on the lookout for that. If you do have questions, put them in the Q&A box down at the bottom, and we will be sure to get them. We'll also be sending out the slide deck to participants along with the recording. And then finally, we do have a post-event survey, which we would love it if you can fill out after today. It provides really great feedback for us and helps us design future electrification training series sessions. So we got some good feedback last year, had some good feedback from session one this year, and hopefully we have some good feedback from today's session. So thank you for everybody who's filled those out before. A little bit of an agenda. We'll be doing first some introductions, then we'll have two sections before the first Q&A and then a break. First, we'll be going over decarbonization program layering, so discussing the different ways you can combine and leverage programs in your capital stack. Then we'll be discussing operations and maintenance of all electric and energy efficient technology. Then after the break, we'll be looking at a build application process and case study. So looking at how you can better engage these kind of programs and how you can incorporate them in new construction that you might be having in the future. And then finally, we'll be closing out with a rehab case study on shifting utility allowances and energy analysis. So we got some feedback from session one that folks would like some case study with applications of this material, and by golly, you're gonna get that today. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speakers. First, we have Lauren Fury from Midpen Housing, Senior Project Manager. We have Fallon Kudo from TRC and Associate Project Manager. We have Jack Aitchison, Manager of Energy Engineering for the Association of Energy Affordability. Uh, Alex Jara from SAFE, who is an Energy and Sustainability Manager. And then finally from the partnership, we have Rachel Diaz, Senior Sustainability Program Manager, and myself, Ian Sharples. So with that, I'd like to turn it over uh, to Jack, actually, for the planning and operations and maintenance. Sorry, I got that a little bit backwards.
Great. Thanks, Ian. Appreciate it. And also, thanks for pronouncing my last name correctly. Almost no one ever does that, so that was great. Next slide, please. Oh, looks like this is financial layering for decarbonization. Oh, it looks like it's Rachel gonna go first.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in or switch, whatever works best. But maybe
Yeah, a little bit of a snafu with the slides. Cool. All right. Rachel, thank you for taking it away.
no worries. It's 11 a.m. in the morning, so hopefully folks have had their coffee. But hey, everyone, I'm Rachel Diaz, as Ian mentioned, a Senior Sustainability Program Manager at the partnership. I primarily work on a few programs tailored to rehab or existing buildings. The first program is a solar and multifamily affordable housing program, or SOMA for short, and the a newer program, the Equitable Building Decarbonization Program. I'll be supporting our efforts on the Northern Region program, along with some folks at the Association for Energy Affordability. So I'll be spending the next few moments presenting on financial layering for decarb projects. Next slide, please. Awesome. So when we think about building resilient, cost-effective, affordable housing, there are really three upgrades that come to mind: heat pumps, solar, and battery storage. Heat pumps help to, slash energy use and replace fossil fuels. Solar helps to generate the clean power right on site. And the storage aspect helps to keep the lights on during outages and helps avoid expensive peak rates. While all of these technologies are great, and they might have their own incentives, it is very rare for a single funding source or rebate program, incentive program to cover the entire cost. So that's really where the need for financial layering comes into the picture. But with the right planning and free technical assistance that can help, map out the various programs and help you define a scope of work, these systems can help to really deliver big cost savings and help owners, integrate more reliable upgrades for their residents. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, decarb projects can be a little challenging. They can be expensive. And unfortunately, the available funding can rarely or oftentimes rarely covers the full cost of the project and the scope of work. Most incentive programs like grants or rebates may only provide partial support, which necessitates that layering multiple funding sources, whether that be additional grants, tax credits, utility rebates, anything like that that can help close that funding gap. But again, layering not only improves the return on investment, but it can help make larger, more impactful retrofits financially viable. Next slide, please. Thank you. So first, when starting your project, it's important to start by defining your scope of work. That usually means beginning with something like an energy audit or a feasibility study to understand what's possible at the project site. And then from there, you'll need to try to prioritize measures that are eligible across, perhaps multiple programs, things like heat pumps or building envelope upgrades. Those things tend to have the most overlap between the available incentive programs out there. And once you've identified your measures, the next step is really to identify which funding sources apply. So this could include federal, state, utility, and local programs. You really want to make sure that you pay attention to just like that stacking piece of the puzzle, because there are certain programs perhaps that have restrictions on co-layering with other programs. Some programs just don't pair nicely, or there are sometimes stipulations around, participating in some programs to cover the same technologies. So that piece is a little tricky. You'll want to, again, pay close attention. I think it's really beneficial to apply to a program, work with a TA that has a better understanding of some of these nuances to help guide you along the way. Um, but that is definitely something to pay attention to. And TA is really great, and it is offered by a majority of the decarb incentive programs out there. It can help you figure out, what funding sources are available and how to combine them effectively. And you can always just start out with enrolling in one program, and you can have the technical analysts, analyze your project and make recommendations to figure out what other programs are out there, how to apply for them. They can give great application related advice and timeline advice as well. So you can always start just on the smaller side, picking one and taking it from there. And lastly, beyond just the available incentive programs, whether that again be state, local utility programs, you can also consider complementary funding sources like tax credits or low interest loans that can help fill any available funding gaps. And now moving on to layering considerations. When you're layering multiple funding sources, there are a few things that are important to keep in mind to avoid any potential delays or missed incentives down the road. First, you'll want to make sure that your timelines are aligned. You'll need to check each program's deadlines and compare them to your project schedule. Many programs require some sort of pre-approval or review of the scope of work prior to any work beginning. So locking that approval in as early as possible is crucial. There's not very many programs that will, take a project where work's already done and retroactively um, issue a rebate check. So just getting the project in the door as early as possible is very important to making sure you can qualify for funding. Next, you'll want to make sure that you understand the utility allowance rules. You'll want to know how the energy savings are passed on to tenants and whether the utility allowances can be adjusted. Keep in mind that programs like SOMA and LIWIP have specific guidelines to ensure that residents continue to benefit from the upgrades, and there are certain program guidelines that prevent the adjustment of UA calculations and how to kind of count some of this as how to count this as a tenant benefit, excuse me. And lastly, you'll want to be clear on when and how the funds are dispersed through the program. Some programs pay at the end of the project as one lump sum rebate. Others do provide phased payments that are tied to certain project milestones, so perhaps like a progress payment if a certain portion of the work has already been completed and verified by the staff. The team can then issue, that partial payment. And there are a few other programs out there that act more of as a direct install or like an upfront grant where there are no out-of-pocket costs related to the scope of work. So just kind of getting that understanding of the payment flow is helpful in being able to manage cash flow more effectively. Next, you'll also want to be prepared for verification at the end of the project. Many programs do require, documentation like receipts, before and after photos, inspection reports, etc. Some programs come out to the project site to verify the equipment or do a virtual inspection at the end of the process. So just keeping all of this in mind and planning for that early on in the project can help you save time and stress later on. Just kind of keep everything centralized as much as you can. It's also really important to assess your own internal capacity. Some programs like SOMA allow contractors or consultants to take the lead on most of the application and compliance work. Other programs aren't as flexible and do require a little bit more of a hands-on approach from your staff. So you'll also need to assess, what responsibility falls in whose hands and, who's leading each effort to make sure that all aspects are completed in a timely manner to avoid, any potential application and payment delays. And lastly, don't forget to take advantage of free program offerings. Many programs offer a variety of free extras baked into the program. Some programs have really great tenant education services where, they can go to the project site, host tenant trainings to build up their capacity on how their bills might be impacted from some of the scope of work or changes on site. Other programs, most programs offer some sort of free technical assistance that's really designed to kind of meet you where you're at. If you don't have a lot of experience, they can really, hold your hand and help get the project off the ground. If you have just like minor concerns, maybe an interconnection problem with the utility, you can reach out and leverage technical assistance services to get some extra hands on deck and hopefully expedite some of the resolution there. And lastly, there's some programs like LIWIP that actually offer free monitoring support. So every LIWIP project comes with a free year of WeGoWise, which is a monitoring platform. So really just try and take advantage of the freebies that are offered through the programs. They're meant to help you, meant to help make this process easier for you and residents. So pay close attention to those things. Next slide, please. Awesome. So switching gears a little bit, this slide shows some of the funding options that are out there that can help support some of the rehab decarb projects. On the state level, we've got programs like LIWIP, SOMA, and TEC that help cover energy upgrades, solar, and electrification. Regionally, there are also a few more localized programs like CAMR, SoCal REN, and 3C REN that can provide additional support. And really the key is knowing what's available in your area and how to stack these programs together to get the most value, which is where, our team, as well as, folks at AEA and the individual programs, technical assistance services can help, just suss everything out and make this scoping process a little bit easier. Next slide. Awesome. This slide here is just really meant to give a snapshot of the types of measures that are eligible under some of the rehab programs that we just looked at. It helps to show, where there's overlap between the programs so you can start seeing how they might be able to be stacked together to help cover more of your project. Next slide. Thank you. And moving on to new construction, there aren't as many incentive programs out there for new construction as there are for rehab projects or standalone retrofit projects. But there are still some, great options out there, both at the state level and regional level. I'd say that Build is probably the most comprehensive rebate program out there for new construction. The best part is that it can be stacked with some of the other programs that are listed here on the slide, like the CETA program or Energy Smart Homes. So that definitely is a really great option to consider if you're located in a build eligible territory. And the partnership does help to implement the build program. So if you do have a project in mind, you can always reach out to us. Ian is our great lead here. So definitely recommend the build program as a resource for new construction projects. And here is a similar just breakdown of some of the key new construction programs and financing sources, along with um, each of the measures that these programs help to support. And as you can see, Build does have a lot of check marks here. So it is, again, a really great starting point and resource for folks. And lastly, in addition to the incentive programs that I just sort of walked through on the previous slides, tax credits can really help to make a project more affordable and viable. It is important to keep in mind, though, that some of the tax credits, like the 48E solar tax credit, will be only available for a limited amount of time and will start to phase out very soon. I believe the date is after December 31st, 2027. Um, so you'll really want to keep in mind these important timelines if you are planning to use, solar tax credits for a solar project. Um, some of the tax credits are remaining unchanged, but it's important to note that solar specifically will be impacted. So I'd recommend revisiting last week's session to just get a rundown or review some of the upcoming policy changes that'll be impacting things like tax credit availability. I know Andrew did a really great job last week kind of breaking down some of these updates. So that recording should be made available soon to folks, either via email or posted directly on our YouTube page. So keep a lookout for that. Definitely recommend revisiting or, ask questions if you have them about some of the tax credits. Um, but definitely recommend that training as a resource. But yeah, that brings me to the end of my section on financial layering. Thanks everyone for listening and being patient. I'll turn it over to Jack to carry on with the rest of the presentation.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. Appreciate that. I'm going to be presenting on operations and maintenance of all electric multifamily affordable housing. Next slide, please. You can skip this slide. Alrighty, so after you complete your retrofit project through the various programs that Rachel shared, now you are in charge of operating and maintaining your all-electric building. So that's what I'm going to cover today. I start out with some myth busting, then I'm going to go into heat pump maintenance. Really, when we're talking about all electric buildings, we should be focusing on heat pumps for HVAC and water heating. I won't be talking much about electric resistance, then induction cooking maintenance, solar PV maintenance, and then the importance of utility monitoring and resident education. Just one call out here. There's a lot of information in my slides that I'm not going to fully cover just because we sort of have a shorter presentation today. So please reference, there are going to be some slides that have like a reference on top. I'm not going to go into detail on those slides, but you can reference them later. They have some instructions on how to maintain all the various equipment that's in the presentation. All right, next slide, please. All right, start off with some myth busting. All electric buildings are more expensive to operate and maintain than gas systems, but is this really true? Next slide, please. When you defer maintenance on an all-electric building or electric appliances, what ends up happening is you're going to see a substantial decrease in your efficiency. And when you have heat pumps in your building, those efficiencies are anywhere between 300 and 500%. So a reduction in efficiency of those appliances is going to be a substantial increase in the electricity that they use, as well as the resulting utility impacts. The reason for that is because well, like I mentioned, electric appliances are significantly more efficient than gas, and electricity is more expensive than gas from like a fuel comparison. When you are consuming 1 BTU of electricity versus 1 BTU of gas, the utility is going to charge you more for that electricity. The benefit of all electric appliances and deferring their maintenance is that you're not going to have dangerous issues. You may see an increase in your utility costs, but you're not going to have issues that could harm your residents in your building. Next slide, please. Conversely, with gas systems, if you defer maintenance on gas systems, you may not see a substantial increase in your utility costs. That's because they are already starting at such a low efficiency. If you have most gas wall furnaces are around 65% efficient, most gas forced air furnaces or water heaters around 80 to 85% efficient. And so if you're operating sort of in that 60 to 80% efficient range, and you have some deferred maintenance, your efficiency may drop, 20%, which you're not going to see on your utility bills. That's only a slight increase in the consumption of the gas. However, when you defer maintenance on gas systems, you are going to see dangerous combustion safety issues occur. Now, the Association for Durability. I have been at AEA for 8 years now, and early in my career, I was doing a lot of field work. And part of what AEA does, as we're implementing various energy efficiency rebate programs that Rachel presented on, is we do combustion safety testing. And on the bottom left is some data from various projects that I actually tested myself. And I went through 1,200 different dwelling units. I tested 1,800 combustion appliances and found that around half of them had some sort of combustion safety issue related to deferred maintenance. It does say dangerous and preventative. The preventative issue that I'm referencing in this data was really recalled gas lines from 1978 that are prone to leaking. And that was about half of the issues that we saw. The rest were high carbon monoxide, gas leaks, backdrafting appliances. These are things that you're not really going to see unless you actually go and test them yourself or test them or hire someone to test for high carbon monoxide, gas leaks, etc. So you can see some photos here. That first photo in the middle, that's 10,641 parts per million of carbon monoxide in that wall furnace. That wasn't just one wall furnace in that building. I went through 10 different units and 8 of them had this high of carbon monoxide. Fortunately, those gases weren't backdrafting into the unit, but 10,000 ppm, that would cause you to pass out if it was in the ambient air within 1 or 2 minutes, and potentially lead to death. So this is like real things that we are seeing in buildings that are very, very risky, but you may, as like an asset manager, not see it in your utility bills. And this sort of perpetuates this issue or perpetuates this myth that mixed fuel buildings are cheaper to operate because you don't need to maintain them as frequently. And if you don't maintain your all electric buildings, you're going to see an increase in utility costs. Next slide, please. All right, now I'm going to jump into HVAC maintenance, and I'm going to be really only talking about heat pumps here. Next slide. So this is sort of like if you lift the hood of a heat pump, this is what it looks like. On the left, you have an outdoor coil. That is pulling in heat from the outside air. You see it's sort of like rejecting that cold, but really it's pulling in heat from that outside air. And then it goes to a reversing valve, an indoor coil. That indoor coil is then pushing heat into the space. You have a compressor, you have an expansion device, but ultimately, like what you need to worry about in terms of maintenance is an air filter on the indoor coil. If you have a ducted system, you may need to clean your ducts. You should at least inspect them annually. And then the heat exchanger coils often need to be cleaned. And that's really in the outdoor coil, not so much the indoor coil. The indoor coil is protected by that air filter. So when you are going into units for standard inspections, etc., you should take a look at the air filter, maybe bring some cleaning material so that when your maintenance staff is inspecting those units, they can clean that air filter. Oftentimes with heat pumps, those air filters are reusable, so they're not like a forced air furnace where you have to actually like replace the full filter. You can clean them. The heat exchanger and coils, so that outdoor coil, depending on your air quality, you may need to clean it more frequently. Next slide, please. So like I mentioned, like I'm not going to go, I went in a little bit of detail on like HVAC maintenance, but this is sort of like the focus of this HVAC maintenance and water heating maintenance is these tables here, or this table, and there's one for the water heating as well. But this is comparing the maintenance for electric heat pump heating and cooling versus a gas central furnace plus split air conditioner versus a gas central furnace. So for electric heat pumps are essentially air conditioners. The only difference is they have a reversing valve that allows the refrigerant to flow in the reverse direction. So it allows you to heat and cool using the same appliance. So if you take a look, indoor air filter inspection slash replacement, you're going to have to do that for both your electric heat pump heating and your gas furnace plus split air conditioner because you have that air conditioner, which is essentially a heat pump. So you sort of see all that overlap between gas central furnace plus split air conditioner. Now, if you just look at the gas furnace, you still have to do the indoor air filter replacement. If you have ducts, you still need to do the duct cleaning, but you don't have that indoor and outdoor coil inspection slash cleaning. But at the bottom here, you have sort of your gas specific things. And I will tell you, most people don't actually do these, but I would highly recommend if you have a mixed fuel building with gas appliances, you should be taking the time, maybe once a year, maybe every 5 years at the latest, check for gas leaks, measure carbon monoxide and combustion gases, check ventilation and drafting, and burner inspection slash cleaning. These are going to be preventative maintenance items to make sure that your appliances are operating safely. These are things that you don't need to do with your electric heat pump heating and cooling. The column on the right is difficulty, and this is intended to sort of help you make a decision on I going to have my maintenance team do this, or am I going to hire a maintenance contractor to do this? So I ranked it easy, medium, and hard. Easy is really, anyone can do it without really any technical training. Medium, if you know that your maintenance person has experience on this type of equipment, or was an HVAC tech or a plumber at some point in their career, maybe you're willing to allow them to do the medium type stuff. Anything that you see hard, we would recommend having a maintenance contractor do that work. Next slide, please. All right, moving on to DHW maintenance. So we are talking heat pumps for heating, space heating, space conditioning, air conditioning, as well as water heating. So, as you could probably imagine, they have the same components. On the left is your air source heat pump for heating and cooling. On the right is your heat pump water heating system. So you have an air to refrigerant heat exchanger that is the same as your outdoor coil. You have a compressor that is the same as your compressor in your heat pump water heater. You have your refrigerant to water heat exchanger, which is the same as your indoor coil. And then you have an expansion device. You don't have the reversing valve because most of the time you are just heating water. You're not cooling water, so you don't need to reverse the flow of refrigerant. And you have the same components. You're going to have an air filter and you're going to have heat exchangers and coils. And the maintenance of those items are going to be basically the same between heat pump water heating and heat pump HVAC. Next slide, please. One thing, or two things, I should say, that you need to be concerned around, specifically around water heating, not specifically around heat pump water heating, although heat pump water heating can be more susceptible to some of these issues, is crossover and hard water. So crossover is when you experience insufficient hot water delivery due to cold water entering the hot water line. There's a diagram on the right here kind of showing what that looks like. Oftentimes we see crossover show itself or sort of the source of crossover is from failed mixing cartridges inside shower valves. They have these like rubber O-rings that are supposed to isolate the hot and the cold lines, and those fail over time. Some manufacturers say that you have to replace your shower cartridges every 2 years. Some say every 5. I can almost guarantee you that no one is replacing them that frequently. They're replacing them when they see the tub spout drip. By that time, you're likely have had crossover for a while. So you have the cold water coming in, it passes through the shower cartridge, and then it goes up and joins the hot water distribution, causing infrequent temperatures, fluctuation of temperatures. Sometimes the temperature can never get hot enough for the resident. So this is something that's not specific to heat pump water heating. It is for any central water heating system. However, because you're operating with a heat pump water heater that's using electricity, when that load increases and your electricity use increases and your subsequent electricity costs increase, you're going to see that much more significantly than if your gas load increase just because of the cost of fuel between electricity and gas. So a lot of buildings have crossover. There was a study done by Innovative back in 2016 that showed that around 50% of multifamily buildings in California, I think it was a sample of around 100 that they tested, had some level of crossover. So this is something that's not new. It's just heat pump water heating is more susceptible to these higher loads and impacting your utility costs. In addition to crossover, you also have to think about hardness. So hardness is the amount of dissolved magnesium and calcium in the water. You can see sort of like that calcium and magnesium buildup on that copper pipe there in that middle photo. And on the right, you can sort of see that's a map of the hardness level of water in throughout California. What happens with hard water is it's going to leave calcium and magnesium deposits in your water heating equipment. If you have tankless water heaters, you're probably familiar with this. You need to flush tankless water heaters because when that calcium deposit sort of fill up that heat exchanger in that tankless gas water heater, you're going to have cracks in your heat exchanger. It acts as an insulator, so it just pumps a bunch of heat onto that copper pipe in that heat exchanger that eventually is going to crack and start to leak, and then you're going to have to replace your tankless water heater. With heat pump water heating, similarly to tankless, you're going to have those small flow paths that water is going to have to pass through that heat exchanger. So you're prone to that clogging, to that calcium magnesium buildup, causing a clog in that heat exchanger. However, Heat pumps operate at much lower temperatures than gas tankless water heaters, so you're not actually going to like crack the heat exchanger, but you may get an error code, and it's something that you need to be thoughtful of while you're maintaining your heat pump water heating system. Next slide, please. So again, here's a table. We have for heat pump water heating, you have air filter inspection/replacement. It's the same as heat pump HVAC. You can see gas water heaters here. If you have a condensing gas water heater, so that's a high efficiency condensing gas water heater, tankless or boiler or water heater, you are going to have an air filter that you also need to inspect and replace. Crossover prevention, like I mentioned, it's not really, it happens regardless of the fuel type of your water heater, but your heat pump water heating can be more susceptible to increased utility costs. So it's important to do for heat pump water heating, but you should be doing it for gas water heating as well. Sacrificial anode rod inspection/replacement. That's for your tank. Heat pump water heaters, gas water heaters, boilers are all going to have tanks, and you are going to need to replace those sacrificial anode rods. Depending on how hard your water is, you may need to replace those more frequently. Flushing heat exchangers for hard water, like I mentioned, heat pump water heaters, that can cause an error code. For gas water heaters, specifically tankless water heaters, that can cause a failure of the equipment. And then you have all your gas-specific maintenance item, checking for gas leaks, measuring carbon monoxide, check ventilation and drafting, burner inspection/cleaning. And you can see the difficulty here. The one call out, flushing the heat exchangers for hard water. We put that as hard. That's something that we typically see handled by maintenance contractors, especially for large central heat pump water heating systems. Once you start getting up beyond the 15,000 BTU heat pump water heater, you're sort of more on the commercial side. Those heat pump water heating systems are fairly complex and they're expensive. You want a maintenance contractor working on those when you're flushing the heat exchanger so that you avoid any issues or your maintenance person accidentally breaking something. Next slide, please. All right, now on to induction cooking maintenance. So induction cooking, in all of our programs, we've been pushing for induction cooking over electric resistance cooking because of the fact that we have a lot of great tenant satisfaction. The cooking experience with induction is on par with gas. You can hear a lot of different celebrity chefs switching to induction. So you have that sort of like cooking experience that's equivalent to gas, which is really important for our tenants. Induction cooking is going to be cleaner, safer, healthier kitchens. There are also marketing opportunities because it's seen as a high-end appliance. Not really utility cost savings, so I wouldn't bank on a reduction in utility costs by switching to induction. But some things that you have to think about as an asset manager, if you have a building with induction cooking, replacement cost is higher, so reserve replacement budgets need to be adjusted. You're not going to be able to get an induction range off HD Supply for $500. You are going to need to spend at least $1,500, so you need to adjust that sort of replacement reserve. Induction cooktop surface is the same as smooth top electric, easy to clean and refresh on turnover. I have had some building owners have some concerns around the glass cooktop, mainly like food debris getting cooked onto it and being hard to remove. One thing that's different about induction than electric resistance is that it operates at a lower temperature. So you're not going to get as much of like a burnt on buildup as you would with an electric range with the same glass cooktop. Insurance credit, not yet, but there's definitely a reduced fire risk with induction. It is heating the pan. It is not heating the element or the cooktop per se. So we have a lot of residents that have given good feedback that have cats that now walk on the induction range without any concern because it's not going to burn their paws. And then consider offering a pot and pan set to new residents that work with induction cooking. This can be something that's fairly low cost, maybe $100 or less. That really goes a long way in ensuring good tenant satisfaction so that they have cookware that they can use with their induction range. Next slide, please. This is one of those reference slides. I'm not going to go into detail here, but just at the bottom here, cleaning an induction range is easy. Replacing parts we put as medium. And then just to call out this Wyman cooktop cleaner, we typically recommend for folks to help get off that like burnt buildup. And projects that we have had cooking demonstrations, we've handed this out for residents so that they can maintain and clean their cooktop as well. Next slide, please. Solar PV maintenance. Go to the next slide. There are a lot of components with solar PV. You have your solar panels, which are on the left. You have your transfer switches, which is sort of this like middle photo. On your right, you have your inverters. On your bottom, you have more inverter. On the bottom right, you have more inverters. In the middle, you have your batteries, lots of various components. Now, fortunately, these components don't really need to be maintained the same way that you would maintain like a heat pump HVAC or heat pump water heater. Next slide, please. The main thing that you need to think about in terms of maintaining your solar PV systems is monitoring them. So if your battery or if your inverter fails or if your panels are dirty, you're going to see that in your utilities. So there's sort of two ways that you can monitor your utilities for your solar PV system. It is monitoring at the like meter level. So that's like looking at your utility bills using like Energy Star Portfolio Manager or WeGoWise. But ideally, you would use something like a performance monitoring system that's incorporated into your inverter or something like that, where that's like real-time data. If you're using your utility data, it could be months before you realize that your solar PV system isn't working. Whereas if you have this performance monitoring system on your actual equipment, you can set up alerts and you can see in real time if your system is operating properly. And then we also recommend that your maintenance staff do visual spot checks, look for exposed wires, bird nests, vegetation, and landscape. These panels on the right are not operating very efficiently. One has a whole bunch of bird poop on it, and the other was hit by golf balls. These are going to be things that you may see in your utility monitoring, you may see in your performance monitoring, but doing your visual inspections, it's a lot easier to identify those issues. Next slide, please. Again, this is for reference. You should clean your solar panels. They are going to save, they're going to operate much more efficiently when they're clean, and the cost to have someone clean them usually is much less than the benefit of or the offset in utility costs for having clean solar panels. Now, I will say some areas like in Humboldt County, it may rain enough that you don't need to worry about cleaning them, but elsewhere, you should clean them frequently. Next slide, please. All right, utility monitoring. I'm going to focus a little bit more on this stuff. So the importance of utility monitoring, really, going back to the myth-busting piece, when you have an all-electric building, when you are deferring your maintenance or you're improperly maintaining your equipment, you're going to see that in your utility costs. And the best way to sort of look to determine if you're maintaining your building properly is utilization of either utility monitoring software or building management systems. So for utility monitoring, you have Utility API, WeGoWise, Energy Star Portfolio Manager. You need to be considerate that you're not going to get the data for a while. It may take a month, right? This is like based off of your actual utility bills. So there's a delay in getting the data, and there's a delay in alerts, which, if your utility costs are increasing substantially, you may want to get ahead of it by doing something more in depth, like a building management system. The one thing that we would recommend is work with account manager reps for these modern utility monitoring software so that you can set up alerts and really use these utility monitoring softwares to their full potential. For building management systems, there are lots of options. Typically, you're going to see these building management systems be incorporated into like larger buildings with commercial type central systems, whether that's HVAC or water heating. And you want to ensure that your BMS works with your existing equipment. The benefit here is that you have real-time data and alerts. So you can set up alerts that that day if something is failing or something is increasing in its energy usage. And then what to look for: unusual spikes of energy usage. These can indicate the system is not performing properly and in need of maintenance. And make sure you consider solar PV and changes in uses based on season. What we do see people do quite frequently is set it up based on cost, and that might not show the full picture. Utility costs can vary throughout the year. If you're on a time of use rate, it can vary throughout the day. So you want to set up your alerts based off energy usage, not cost. Next slide, please. All right, and then I'm going to go into a utility monitoring case study. So we have a hybrid central heat pump water heating system. This is an older project where we didn't have enough electrical capacity to convert the full water heating system to all electric. We have a gas backup here. If we were to do this project now, we have pathways to fit within that electrical infrastructure, but this was back in 2017. What happened was these heat pumps were on the roof, and maintenance staff had no idea that they had failed because of check valve issues. And what ended up happening was the gas system started to creep up. Next slide, please. The gas usage started to creep up. So this is what the utility data looks like. So May 2017, sorry, the green is gas usage, the blue is electricity usage. May 2017 is when the retrofit occurred. Now, this is just, this can help sort of frame also like the amount of energy usage that gas system used versus the amount of the new electric heat pump usage increase. So you see that like blue line between April 2017 and May 2017, it doubled, but that is such a significant decrease from what the gas system was. So this just sort of like, perpetuates what I was saying earlier, where electric appliances are going to use much more electricity or much less electricity or much less fuel because they are much more efficient. But because electricity costs are high, an increase in electricity is going to impact your utility bills. Well, what ended up happening is you start to see the green over the year sort of tick back up. And fortunately, we were monitoring this building and we were able to see that green gas usage increase. And because of that, we went out to the property and found out that the check valves had failed in the heat pump water heaters. And by replacing those, we ended up getting back to a more normal energy usage pattern. So this is sort of like highlights like the details or how difficult it can be using utility monitoring. And if we were to set up alerts, you should be really critical about seasonality, right? The winter months, we're seeing more gas usage. So when you're setting up your alerts, be very meticulous on what is going to trigger an alert so that you can identify these issues. Cool. Next slide. Utility allowance, make sure to use the appropriate schedule. Space heating, some housing authorities have an electric heat pump UA, which is lower than the regular electric space heating one. Air conditioning, do not forget to include it if you are using package terminal heat pumps or split systems. Water heating does not apply if you have a central system. One thing to note here at the bottom, if you have solar benefiting your tenants, and if your financing stack allows it, consider using QAC instead of the housing authority, because QAC can take advantage of the solar benefiting your tenants for your utility allowances. It's not always viable, especially in depressed markets with high AMI counties. Next slide, please. Going a little bit fast because I'm running out of time. Working with residents. Next slide. All electric buildings may require resident education to improve tenant experience and efficiency of equipment/operation. Next slide. So in our retrofit projects, I cannot emphasize enough how important hosting educational resident meetings and trainings are. You can host cooking demonstrations during that time. You can also provide pot and pan sets for new tenants. And when retrofitting properties with induction cooking during those cooking demonstrations or educational resident meetings, ultimately people want to be in the know. What we've experienced is that when we are upfront with the tenants around what we're going to do in their property, or in their home, they are much more receptive to it. All electric buildings may require retraining how folks interact with their HVAC and water heating systems. Most people that use wall furnaces turn them on. They heat their apartment in 5-10 minutes and then they turn them off. That is an insufficient way to run heat pumps. We also hear a lot from folks that I turned my heat pump off because it was running for more than 30 minutes and I'm afraid of my electricity bill going up. Heat pumps run very, very efficiently and run for long periods of time. So like re-educating people to make sure that they're taking advantage of their new equipment is super important. Provide support on how to read a utility bill, especially when you have net energy metering or virtual net energy metering, and train your on-site staff to help people navigate their utility bills. Next slide, please. Choosing a thermostat. The out-of-the-box thermostat for a mini split are poor. They are confusing to use. They're remotes that can be expensive to replace if they get lost. Consider a third-party thermostat and consider having a pamphlet left behind on how to program it and how to schedule it. Next slide. Resident utility bills, they are confusing. Make sure that you have someone on site who can help them navigate their utility bill. Confirm residents are on the correct utility schedule, especially after rehab. Unfortunately, through our programs, we cannot change residents' utility schedules. They have to do it themselves. So you need to provide support there, provide tenant leave behinds explaining solar, understand the difference between understand the utility bill true up, CCAs versus IOUs, time of use, etc. Next slide. This is my last slide. This is just to highlight how a utility bill can be quite confusing. You have your amount used this month in that sort of like red box. You have your Soma solar kilowatt hour credit and your bill usage. If you're a resident and didn't even know that the solar was benefiting you, you might not know what's happening. So it's important to help sort of help folks navigate their utility bills. All right. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Jack. We're going to go into a little bit of Q&A now and then have a 5-minute break. So let me stop sharing the slides here and we'll open up the Q&A box. So if you have anything, any questions you have for Jack or for Rachel, feel free to put them in the Q&A box. Let's see what we have here. So we have a couple questions that have already been answered, but I want to make sure they get on the recording. First one is, will we receive the presentation recording and slides? Yes, we'll be sending those out after this session. So yeah, don't worry about getting the recording or getting the slides. And then we have another one from Jonathan Astman. Which of these programs are for new construction? And Rachel was able to answer that. But you're looking at Build, California Energy Design Assistance, or CEDA, and the Energy Smart Homes are kind of the larger statewide new construction programs. There's also some regional ones from the utility providers. You can look at 3C REN on the Central Coast. There's also SoCal REN, and I think a couple others up in Northern California. So definitely look at some of the regional options as well. If you want help finding some of those programs, a couple good resources were shared by Angel in last week's presentation, the 101 session. So definitely check those out. Go Green Financing is a good one. Switcheson.org is another good resource you can search for things. And desire.org is also another good resource. There should be links to those in the slides from the last session. Cool. So we got a couple other questions. Aaron also asking, will the recording be sent out? Yes, yes, it will. It should also, I think, be put up on our YouTube channel after a little bit. And then we have a question from Eli, and I think this is for addressed to Jack. Cleaning panels twice a year seems like a lot. Is there a link to research on this that production increases significantly? So I guess could you speak to the energy production?
Yeah, I mean, any sort of film that gets built onto panels is going to substantially reduce your efficiency of your panel. The twice a year, that's typically what we recommend as a baseline. Obviously, if you're in areas where you get more rain, you might be able to get away with once a year. For specific studies, I'm sure I could dig one up, but it's fairly common knowledge of like gunk on the panel, you're going to have less solar irradiation getting to the panel, getting to those cells, generating that electricity. And so, if you're in Southern California, we have a project out in Southern California where it's quite dusty. It doesn't rain that often, and the multifamily building owner is cleaning their panels 3 times a year. It just depends on your climate, but twice a year is typically a good starting point.
Cool. Let's see. I was wondering if you could maybe elaborate on how to make the panels more accessible. Is there a way to make the cleaning an easier step if it's something that is kind of a barrier to getting the most out of them?
Yeah, I mean, if you have like a flat roof that's accessible, having the panels on that flat roof, you might be able to utilize your maintenance team to clean the panels. But if you have a pitched roof or your panels are on a carport, typically you're going to have to hire a maintenance contractor to do that, just because your maintenance team might not be able or legally able to access the roof in those situations. But even then, like the increase in energy production from a clean panel compared to a dirty panel has been, in our experience, has shown that like the cost for having a maintenance contractor come out outweigh or is less than the cost savings that you have from a well operating panel.
I think you just kind of answered Mara's question here. Does cleaning of the panel need to be done by a specialist, or can this be routine maintenance task done by an on-site maintenance person? Are there any other sort of considerations in terms of, who would be doing the cleaning and the maintenance on the solar panels that owners should be aware of?
Yeah, I mean like the physical cleaning of the panel, anyone can do. It's just the access that can be the challenge.
Then Lauren's got another question in regard to wildfire smoke impacts on panels. Could you be able to speak on, how much, I guess, the smoke is able to impact panels besides probably just the cleaning from any ash that might settle,
Yeah,
is,
I haven't had any projects where we have seen an increase in cleaning due to wildfire smoke. I would assume that that happens because of the air quality issues associated with wildfire smoke. I will say we have a project down in LA where there is a vacant building next to it, and we are cleaning. The property is cleaning coils on their HVAC heat pumps, as well as their heat pump water heating and their solar panels much more frequently than other properties, because the vacant building next door is occupied by people who are experiencing homelessness, and they are starting quite a lot of fires quite frequently in that building, causing significant impacts to the air quality in the surrounding area, which we are seeing in the equipment, the solar panels, the heat pumps, the heat pump water heaters, etc. So indoor air quality is definitely going to impact your frequency of cleaning your panels.
cool. Have you seen any sort of kind of automatic cleaning systems that are on the market yet, or is that a technology that's coming in the future, where you might be able to kind of set it and forget it?
I think there is like a like what are those like vacuums called? Like an iRobot, or maybe that, yeah, like a iRobot for your panels. I think there are quite a few startups that are doing that, where you have sort of like a automatic panel cleaner that you can set out and clean your panels. So I don't know any off the top of my head, but I have seen photos of it.
Cool. Then I don't see any other questions, so I think we can head to a 5 minute break here. We'll be back at, looks like, 12:03. So yeah, enjoy that. Get up, stretch, get some water, and we'll be back for the last hour of this. And I think it'll be really good. We'll have some really good case studies that we'll be going through for new construction rehabs. So stay tuned. Be back in a minute. All right, everybody, welcome back. I'm going to move into the case study portion of the program. And so we'll be having a nice presentation on build technical assistance from Fallon now. This will be really helpful in understanding how to engage with technical assistance across the different programs um, by using build as kind of the case study for that. So I want to pass it on to Fallon now and go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Ian. Hello, everybody. My name is Fallon Kudo. I'm with TRC. I'm the lead technical assistance associate for the build application process. I've been with TRC for nearly 4 years now. In my role, I assist applicants through each phase of the build program, from design to construction and then completion. Um, Today, I'm going to be going over that process and what it looks like to go through technical assistance and all the aspects that we have for our applications within Build. Next slide. All right. Oh, sorry. Build provides incentives for new construction, affordable all-electric multifamily and single-family homes in California. If you're building in one of these listed territories, please don't hesitate to reach out to your build representative. Don't miss out. There are still funds available. We have 4 IOU territories: Southern California Gas Company, which is SoCal Gas, San Diego Gas and Electric, SDG&E, Southwest Gas, that all still have incentives available that have not been reserved yet. Unfortunately, PG&E has been fully subscribed. We are working through those reservations, and we do have a substantial wait list for that territory. But yes, please don't miss out on these funds if you're in those territories, and reach out to us so we can get you into the application process. Next slide. Technical assistance is provided by the Association for Energy Affordability, AEA, and TRC. The program participant roadmap, this outlines the steps that each applicant will follow during the process. The first step is the technical assistance application, which it's not required before submitting a reservation. If you'd like to submit a reservation directly to the build portal, you can do that. Next, applicants proceed to the design reservation application. This application is intended for projects that have not yet received their building permits and are still in the design phase. Once the design application is approved, the project moves on to the construction reservation application. Projects that come into the pipeline with their building permits already obtained would start directly at this stage. After the construction application is approved, projects will then be able to request progress payments. Build offers 2 progress payments. The first, 25% of the GHG incentives when the building permits have been approved. And the second is 50% of those GHG incentives when the foundations have been poured. The final payment can be requested upon project completion, once the temporary certificate of occupancy or the certificate of occupancy has been issued. At this point, the project can either request the remaining funds after the progress payments or the entire lump sum of the incentives. Technical assistance is available throughout the entire process. Projects pursuing TA are entitled to 300 free hours per each developer. That will assist throughout the entire time that your project is in the program. Next slide. All right. Build technical assistance offers consultation for incentive layering, preparation for all electric buildings, project-specific support, and post-occupancy system assistance. Next slide. Eligibility for technical assistance includes private individuals, public entities, developers, nonprofits, and tribal communities. The applicant must show at least 5 years of development experience. They should have developed and received a certificate of occupancy for at least one deed-restricted multifamily residential property in California, or for at least one individual single-family home. The applicant must be a legal entity or group of entities that has ongoing control of that deed-restricted residential building. For single family, the applicant does not include the seller of the property unless the seller remains control of the project during construction and completion. And then all build requirements must also be met. Next slide. Projects must fit into one of the following categories. They need to be either a new residential construction, a residential alterations involving more than 50% of the exterior walls being removed, or repurposed commercial buildings for residential use. Those projects must be in one of the 4 IOUs, so Southern California Gas, Pacific Gas and Electric, San Diego Gas and Electric, or Southwest Gas. The project must meet the income limits for low-income housing, such as multifamily housing. The building has to be at least 2 rental units that are designed for deed-restricted low-income residential housing and has one or more of the following requirements. So they need to be a property that is in a disadvantaged community and follows the income rules of affordable multifamily financing, or the property is in a low-income community where at least 50% of the households earn less than 60% of the area's average income and follows the income rules for affordable multifamily financing. Or the last one here, at least 80% of the households in the building earn at or below 60% of the AMI. For single family housing, it refers to the low income home sold at an affordable price to lower income families. And it comes with a resale restriction or an equity sharing agreement, which means the homeowner cannot keep more equity than agreed upon when they sell the home. Next slide. Incentives are determined using the Build Custom Path Tool, or what we call the CPT, which analyzes the project's energy models to calculate the final savings on the resident utility cost and the corresponding incentives amounts. To accurately represent the incentive amounts, applicants must complete the CPT for their design and construction reservations. Build offers 4 comprehensive categories for incentives. The first 3 are the base GHG incentive. The second one is the building efficiency, and the third one there is incremental PV. The specific incentive amounts and PV requirements are confirmed during the CEC's approval of the construction reservation. And then the CEC does regularly update the custom path tool to ensure it aligns with the current energy code changes. Next slide. The 4th category of incentives is the kicker, or what we call the bonus incentives. These incentives are not mandatory for applicants, but they provide excellent reasons to install equipment that enhances the energy efficiency of the building or the home, such as grid flexibility. This includes smart thermostats, JA13 compliant heat pump water heaters, and other incentives also include induction cooktops, which offers $300 per unit, and then electric vehicle supply equipment, which provides various levels of incentives. Next slide. Here I have broken down the incentive details for our case study, which was Fairhaven Commons. The first bubble here we have was the base GHG incentives, and this was $218,970, and it was based on the GHG's emissions that were avoided. The next one was the overall building efficiency, and they brought in $96,860, and it was based on the percent above code per their energy model. And then the next one would have been the incremental PV. This is the modeled resident utility cost. For this project, they didn't implement that, so we were able to jump right over to the kicker incentives. They were able to bring in $36,000 in incentives for additional GHG reduction technologies. Overall, the total incentive for Fairhaven Commons was $351,830. Right. Next slide. So the next slide is the supporting documents that are required during each phase of the application process. I have linked them here, so once you do get your slide deck, you'll be able to check in on each one of these checklists. But for the step 1 design, you're going to need your preliminary certificate of compliance, which is your CF1R, LMCC, or NRCC. This doesn't have to be your official final one. This can be what you believe you're going to build to your project, and that'll work for your step 1 design. Next, you'll need your payee data record or STD 204 form. Then you'll need, of course, the custom path tool or CPT for all projects pursuing step 1 and step 2. This can be completed by either your energy consultant or us at TRC would be happy to help. There is a Build Simple calculator that can be used for projects pursuing the New Adopter Award. That is only eligible for those. And then if applicable, your project will need to provide a CalEnviro screen score if they're in a disadvantaged community. For step 2, you're going to need your official final certificates of compliance, the CF1R, LMCC, or NRCC, the energy models that coincide with those, an updated custom path tool, your approved building permits, as well as evidence of the affordable housing financing source approvals. This could be your approval letters or any award notice that you get on those finances. And then the last step 3, project completion, you would provide an updated payee data record, the final energy models, your installation and verification certificates. Those are your CF2Rs and CF3Rs, the temporary or final certificate of occupancy, the meter IDs for the PV, and then your PV PTO bundle. So that would be your interconnection agreement, the line diagrams, and your building, and then building permits. And then the compliance certificates, that's your CF1Rs, and then your recorded deed restriction or covenant. And then last but not least, your VNEM agreement. If you are pursuing a VNEM program within the utilities, you would provide that contract as well, and it'll show your demonstration of individual. Next slide. The CEC application review process are based on a first come, first served queue. Due to high number of or high volume of applications, projects may experience delays in receiving responses from the CEC. Once an application is reviewed, the project administrative team will review one of the following notifications via the Build Online portal. So you'll either receive a correction notification that you must complete those correction items and resubmit. You do have 30 days to resubmit those before receiving an incomplete notice. And then the second notice would be your application approval notification. If you receive that one after submitting, there's no further action needed at that time, and your TA representative will reach out with your next steps to move on to the next portion of the process. And then project step transitions, once the application is approved, either step 1 or step 2, it is eligible to progress to the next step of the build program. The eligibility and required documentation to proceed to those next steps was listed in the supporting documents checklist, and I did provide those links so you can reference them there. Please remember that once you get to step 3, the completion application is only for applications that have been approved for a construction reservation. Payment claims for applicants with approved incentive reservations and meeting all program milestones for an incentive payment. The following payment claim packages are available for completion and upload to the application in Build Online. They are also linked on this slide deck for you. Step 1 is the design claim form. This is for New Adopter Design Award payments. And then step 2 is the construction or progress payment claim forms. And then the project completion or lump sum final payment claim form. Please contact the Build Online System application and claim instructions for more detailed assistance with completing and submitting each of these incentive claims. TRC is here to help you through each of these. We can walk you through all the different payment claims and application processes during one-on-one calls or via email, however you like to move forward with that. Next slide. So the next steps would be to complete a technical assistance application form. A member of the build team will reach out to you within 3 business days to arrange an introductory call and discuss the next steps for moving your project through to the build application portal. And then last, I added a slide here. This includes the resource links for the build program, including the CEC Build Online login page, the build program guidelines, which maps out the entire program details and eligibility and requirements, and then the Build GIS tool. This provides additional information on funding availability by each territory, showing how much funds are left, what's been reserved, and that way you can see if you still have funds available in your area. All right, well, that concludes my presentation on the Build Technical Assistance portion of the Build program. Well, thank you guys.
All right, thank you, Fallon. We're now going to hand it over to Lauren for new construction case study. Mid-Penn Housing participated in the build program, so Lauren's going to explain how that fit into their new construction process. So take it away, Lauren.
Hi, everyone. So I'm going to be talking about Fairhaven Commons, which successfully applied for the build program over the course of 2021 through 2023, and just some key lessons and takeaways from that I had from that process, not only in working with build, but with commissioning our solar system at the property. So next slide, please. So I'm Lauren Fury. I'm a senior project manager with Mid-Penn Housing. I've been at Mid-Penn for almost 6 years, and I've primarily worked in the North Bay and also in San Francisco on new construction projects. And Mid-Penn Housing has been around since 1970. We're an owner, operator, developer, and resident services provider. So we take a very holistic approach to our buildings. And Mid-Penn, the development team, decided several years ago now, I think back in 2020, to only do all electric design for our new communities. Next slide, please. So this is Fairhaven Commons, which is in Fairfield and Solano County in the Bay Area. As you can see, we had quite a large solar system installed on the property because it is 2- and 3-story garden style walk-ups. We were able to get a very high ratio of coverage of our solar system relative to the units and the number of households at the property. And as you can tell, Fairfield is a pretty sunny place, so it was a great place for solar. Next slide. Just some very basic facts about Fairhaven Commons. As I said, it was garden style, 2- and 3-story walk-ups, all electric design, 8 buildings, 7 of which are residential, and 1 was a community building. Or is a community building with 72 residential units. We were financed by 9% tax credits, the city of Fairfield, Solano County, many other sources, HCD's No Place Like Home program, and AHP. And then we were placed in service in 2023. Next slide. So our solar system at the property cost almost $600,000, and then we were able to offset more than half of that cost with the build incentive program. And then we additionally received $36,000 towards our heat pump water heater costs through build. So we got a total award of $351,000. So that's a pretty significant commitment to the project. And, as I said, it reduced our solar system cost almost by half, which was really great for Fairhaven Commons because our solar system was sized not only, with the goal of offsetting tenant utility bills, but just to meet California energy code. So the $600,000 was essentially like our minimum cost. And then the build program came in and helped us pay for half of that, which was extremely helpful. Next slide. So in applying for build, just going to echo what some of the other presenters have said, but just use technical assistance. It was so critical for our project to get through, evaluating if Fairhaven Commons would be a good fit for build, submitting the application. We actually had to make several changes to our project while it was under construction to fully utilize the build program. Build came out once Fairhaven was already under construction, but it was early construction. So we were able to, kind of quickly pivot to make use of this program. But it did require increasing our solar system size by about 5%. to qualify for the $315,000 that we ultimately got. And then we were also able to swap out our specified heat pump water heater that we selected during bidding to a different one that qualified for the $36,000 kicker from Build. And that was great because it was a no cost change on our end, and we got to bring in that additional money to the project. But both of those things were not easy changes, and we relied very, very heavily on our technical assistant provider to help navigate with Build how our solar system needed to change, what specific heat pump water heater would work with our project and the space we had available, but would still also qualify for this kicker. And like other people are saying, the sooner you can get into the Build program, the better. There are other kickers available that we would have loved to be able to take advantage of, but they just weren't as easy of a one-to-one swap as the heat pump water heater. And then something very specific that happened on Fairhaven Commons was the project had a very long development cycle. It took a long time for us to fully finance the project. And so when we were under construction in 2021, the project had been permitted under the prior building code cycle, and the Build program was evaluating the solar system against the current building code and Title 24 cycle. And so the way that the Build program works, that meant that our solar system was like just shy of meeting the threshold to qualify. And so again, with technical assistance help, we were able to work with our solar installer and our solar designer to increase the system about 5% at a cost of about $30,000 to then unlock that $350,000 through the Build program. Again, that's unique, but a lot of our projects sit in development for a long time. So that's something early I would try and get ahead of. If you are evaluating applying for Build, was your project permitted under the current building code cycle or a prior one? And if a prior one, you should, look into this question about whether your solar system sizing qualifies you for the incentive or not, or if it's easy to increase it and then qualify. Next slide, please. So beyond Build, I learned a lot of lessons just getting our solar system off the ground with PG&E. I'm, all of my experiences here in Northern California, so I apologize. I'm not sure if any of this translates to SoCal Edison, but this is my experience with PG&E. So if you have a solar system here, it has its own application and agreement. So you'll have your temp power where you apply and sign an agreement, firm power, and then interconnection is its own thing. And on my projects, we've typically submitted our interconnection application early in construction, and then that kicks off a long process that culminates in signing your interconnection agreement and getting permission to operate, or PTO, after construction completes and after the system has been inspected and approved by PG&E. So I really strongly recommend working closely with your solar installer and your solar designer, if they're one and the same or if they're different, finding out who is going to be on point for helping you navigate this interconnection process with PG&E. There are a bunch of steps in the process. The timeline to get through the process is really dependent on who your contact is at PG&E and how engaged they are. And yeah, it can easily take, the full course of construction to get to having a draft interconnection agreement ready to go. And then ultimately, this really important milestone is permission to operate. So this will only come once your system is up and functional, after your building has been placed in service, and then PG&E has inspected the system. There's other steps in the process that I'm glossing over, but your solar installers or AEA or TRC can really help shed more light on. But the reason that it's important to us as the developer is because you will only start seeing credit for your solar generation on your PG&E bills. You will only start getting that credit once you have permission to operate. So there will be a period of time where your building's in service, tenants are using their units, you're operating the laundry and your house services. Your solar system is up and working, but PG&E doesn't recognize the credit that comes from your solar system's generation. So once you get PTO, PG&E will start crediting your project, but you might not actually see the credits appear on bills yet. So you'll still get bills that'll look like there's no solar generation, there's no solar credit offset, but ultimately PG&E will refund you for any credits between getting PTO and when the credits start showing up on bills. But this was a big learning for us. And we had several issues with getting to permission to operate. One thing was that our solar installer didn't move the process forward as quickly as they could have. It took the project being in operation for a few months and for actually our ownership team to notice, or our property management team to notice, that the bills were not showing any credit. And then we realized we had to push forward this process. So again, I just really stress like connecting with your solar installer sooner to understand what these timelines are, who's going to be responsible for pushing the process forward and when, to make sure you're getting your PTO as soon as possible so that you can start getting credit for your solar system generation. And just a word of warning to those of you who work in San Francisco, if you have SFPUC as your electricity provider, I believe you need SFPUC to apply for interconnection on your behalf with PG&E. And so in San Francisco, it can take even longer for you to actually get that PTO. On Fairhaven Commons, it was about 6 months after construction completion, but I think it can be up to a year or longer in some in San Francisco projects that have SFPUC as their electricity provider. Okay, next slide. I'm just including this for reference. This is the latest that I have from one of our solar installers on what kind of all the steps are to get to PTO once you've started the application process early in construction. So I would say, as soon as you have a good schedule from your contractor when the solar system is going to be installed, you can have that conversation with the solar installer about going through these timelines and making sure you're tracking them, including them in like your follow-ups. If you use task trackers like I do, I'll have a tracker just for this, and making sure we're checking in every 30 to 60 days on the status of our interconnection application. Next slide. So just some key tips that I also learned. It's really important to work with your property management and asset management team on transitioning management of the solar system to them. For us, we're underwriting that solar generation credit in our operating expenses, meaning we are assuming that we will get solar offset for our electrical bills. That really affects your debt service coverage ratio when you're converting to your perm loan. And there can be issues with getting your solar system fully commissioned. So I would really echo Jack's point about utilizing the monitoring apps. That was really critical on Fairhaven Commons. We learned that we had several faulty panels, certain pieces of equipment that were installed weren't working as expected. So the system wasn't generating, several panels weren't generating panel, and we actually had an entire system on one building that wasn't generating power. And it was only through using the apps that we caught it. Because of this issue, if you wait to look at the bills, number one, if you've just placed the building in service and you don't have PTO, again, you won't see solar generation on the bills. And even if you have PTO, it might be a few more months before you see solar generation. So you can't catch it early on if you're relying on bills to tell you whether or not the system's performing as expected. But the apps can show you, and they can show you real-time data. Like it will, if in the middle of the day you look at the screen and some of the panels are black and others are blue, you have an issue. And that was, again, really critical for us. Once you do start receiving PG&E bills, though, I strongly recommend coming up with a process for ensuring either you or property management or asset management is reviewing the bills each month. To look for, once you have PTO, when to confirm that generation credit is showing up. And then also to make sure that tenants are switching the bills from the owner name to their name. This is another like tracker use case for us on Fairhaven Commons, but we had to track each and every unit to make sure that tenants were making the switch. And on Fairhaven Commons, we had a lot of special needs and homeless households who needed a lot of support to make that switch over from, mid-pen housing ownership to their name. And then the other thing is choosing the right O&M plan. A lot of solar installers offer different tiers. I just recommend really thoroughly evaluating what is offered by those different tiers and confirming with the installer, what the expectations are for implementing those different tiers. For instance, again, just a lesson we had on Fairhaven Commons is we paid for the very high end O&M support from our installer, but ultimately we were the ones that caught that the system wasn't functioning as anticipated because we were using the monitoring apps. And in retrospect, there had been some debate on our team whether we needed that very high end operation plan because it was quite expensive. And in retrospect, I think we would have chosen the less expensive one and made the project operating budget work a little bit better based on the service we provided. The last thing I would just say on this piece too is it's really important before construction completes, I'll speed up a little bit, to work with your property manager to figure out who's on point for all of these different pieces. Are they the ones looking at the bills each month, or are you? Are they the ones looking at the app? Whose name gets set up in the app? Who gets a login, et cetera? And then other things when transitioning bills to tenants, again, because of this issue of the credit not showing up on bills, I recommend considering budgeting a reserve, especially if you have construction savings to pay for those higher than anticipated electrical costs until you start getting the credit on bills. Using trackers to make sure tenants are transferring bills to their names. And then if you have special needs or homeless households, think about ways to help them fund their initial startup costs with PG&E. Sometimes they have to pay a deposit. And again, they can need a lot of support in making sure the transition happens to their name. Okay, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Lauren. And now we're going to shift over to Alex for our final section on rehab case studies and shifting utility allowance and energy analysis.
Great, thank you for having me, and hello everyone. My name is Alex Jarrah. I'm the Energy and Sustainability Manager at Stewards of Affordable Housing for the Future, also known as SAFE. We are a nonprofit collaborative based in Washington, D.C. of 13 nonprofit affordable housing developers who own and operate collectively 160,000 units across 49 states. Serve about 250,000 residents. Our members include Mercy Housing, National Core, and Bridge Housing, who I will speak about today. Next slide, please. So quick overview of what I'll be discussing today. Project background. This is a Bridge Housing property known as Foothill Farms. I'll discuss the scope of work, the project financials, utility allowance revisions, and some key takeaways from the project. Next slide, please. So Foothill Farms is a senior property featuring low-rise garden-style apartments. It has a total of 138 units. It was built with low-income housing tax credits, and it was built in 2012. And this is important because by the time this project took place in 2023, 2024, a lot of that original equipment was nearing the end of its useful life. So while we like to think of this as an electrification retrofit, we also like to think of it as just a smart and opportunistic equipment replacement project. The project overview is a near full electrification of the property, and they worked with carbon zero buildings to retrofit the property. Next slide, please. Here's the in-unit scope of work. So in all the units, they installed LED lighting upgrades, low-flow aerators, 138 65-gallon Rheem Proterra heat pump water heaters, as well as Samsung Hilux air source heat pumps. On the right, you could see the previous gas heater, and on the rightmost image, you can see the new heat pump water heater. These were placed in exterior closets to help minimize some of the noise disruptions that tenants can experience with heat pump water heaters, and they're also placed in plastic drain pans to help prevent any or catch any leaks. Next slide, please. On the left here, we have the previous air conditioning unit, and these were replaced with Samsung Hilux heat pumps. These heat pumps are really great because you're able to use, or rather reuse, your existing refrigerant lines and electrical wiring, and that's a great way to cut down on costs. Some of the noteworthy tips that come out of the in-unit scope of work here is that the project team started with an in-unit mock-up. So while they were waiting for their incentive applications to be approved, they just went ahead, installed all the measures in the single unit, and that allowed them to really troubleshoot any problems that came up. So when it became time to scale the project to all the other units, they were able to be in and out within a day and minimize that tenant disruption. As I mentioned, they reused existing refrigerant lines, electrical wirings, and ductworks. They were also able to reuse the existing air handling units that were in tenant units by just installing a new control. And they also kept the existing thermostats to minimize the change in interface for residents. So it's really important to think about how to think about the tenant experience when it comes to installing these measures. Next slide, please. I won't spend too much time on the common area scope of work because it includes a lot of the same measures as the in-unit scope of work. But Foothill Farms does have a pool, and they did electrify the heating equipment for the pool. So they replaced boilers with heat pump pool heaters. Kind of neat thing about this project was that by removing the boilers that were housed in the utility room, they were able to just have a bunch of empty space that they could then use as as additional storage. They also went ahead and installed 30 loop level 2 electric vehicle chargers. And while they did not electrify their dryers, they did, however, install the circuits and outlets necessary to electrify the dryers in the future. In this project, the dryers still had they were still within their useful life, so it was just not time. But that's important to keep in mind when you think about these types of projects. What can't you electrify now, and how can you prepare for that moving forward in the future? Next slide, please. The project financials for Foothill Farms is pretty impressive. The total project cost came out to just shy of $2.6 million. But by leveraging all these different incentive programs, including LIWIT, SMUD rebates, and tech, the total bridge housing contribution came out to only $27,000. So that is really good for an affordable housing provider, and is well within something that a property can take on. Next slide, please. So the utility allowance revisions, I think, make this project really interesting. Natural gas at Foothill Farms is an owner-paid expense. So by electrifying the previous gas water heating and gas space heating equipment, what that meant is that you were shifting costs from owners to residents. And that resulted in changes to the utility allowance schedule that Foothill Farms was using. So this resulted in increases to UAs of $30, but that also meant that the rent had to be reduced in kind to stay within that 30% income limit. Next slide, please. But this arrangement can really can still result in a win-win for both owners and residents. So on the resident side, utility allowances went up by $30 and rent payments went down by $30. But because the equipment they installed was so efficient, their actual anticipated energy cost increase was only $12. So the resident cost savings per month are about $18. On the owner side, because the owners are no longer paying for natural gas. They're saving about $75,000 in utility costs, but losing about $50,000 collectively in lost rent. However, this still results in a total increase in net operating income simply because the utility savings of getting off gas exceed those of the lost rent. So this is really a win-win for residents and owners. Next slide, please. I wanted to show you all what it would look like if they ended up using an energy efficient utility allowance. I do want to preface this by saying that this is modeled and this is not actually what they ended up using. But if they were to work out an energy efficient UA with the local PHA, we would see resident cost savings of $9 per month, but owner savings of about $38,000 increase to NOI. So while even using an energy efficient UA, both residents and owners still come out on top, the gap is a little wider. Next slide, please. So some key takeaways and future considerations for this project. One, we recommend partnering with a full service energy consultant. There are more consultants coming out on the market with expertise in not only electrification, but also navigating and accessing incentive programs. And we're finding that the more developers work with these consultants, the more they're able to access incentives and really minimize their contribution. Second, we recommend evaluating your full portfolio. We estimate that in any given portfolio, there are about 5 to 20% of properties that fit this foothill farms typology that can electrify while also resulting in win-wins for owners and residents. And SAFE actually just published another case study of a Mercy housing property in San Francisco last week that walks through how to identify these candidates for electrification. So definitely recommend checking that out. Third, we recommend considering impacts to residents, including utility allowances and also tenant experience. Reuse what you can, like I mentioned, reuse if you're able to electrical wiring, ductwork, refrigerant lines, and really try to cut down on those costs where you can. And then lastly, monitoring building performance. So by benchmarking and by monitoring the energy performance post retrofit, the project team was able to confirm that the actual savings measured up to the project estimate. So that was really great to see. And I think we will open it up to Q&A now.
Wonderful. Thank you, Alex. Let's see, what do we have in the Q&A box? Yeah, I'm not seeing any questions at the moment. Yeah. So I think if there's no questions, I think we can probably close out early. So once again, I'd like to thank our sponsors. We have the Equitable Building Decarbonization Program launching this fall from the California Energy Commission. It's a new sponsor this year. We also have our ongoing sponsors as well. LIWIP for multifamily existing buildings, build for new construction, and as well as SOMA for existing and new construction, and LADWP's CAMR program. So thank you again to all of our sponsors, Build, LIWIP, SOMA, CAMR, and EBD. I hope you've had a very informative and joyous time with us for our electrification training series this year. So I'd like to thank all of you for participating. I'd like to thank all of our sponsors and our presenters, and I hope you have a good day. Thank you.